Ministerpräsidentin Manuela
Schwesig, Prime Minister of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, called Gerhard Schröder in a skirt and, next to Angela Merkel, one of the most pro-Russian representatives in German politics. Manuela Schwesig's policies continue linked to Russian interests when it comes to the construction of Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, and now the issue of re-establishing Germany's economic relations with Russia. And that's why Ms. Schwesig is called Schröder in a skirt, in comparison to the German Chancellor, who brought together the economies of Germany and Russia. For a long time, she could not come to Poland precisely because of her cooperation with the Kremlin, but after the change of power in our country, German media are already writing about the thaw. Schwesig, again welcome in Poland. Very disturbing and very bad news. Manuela Schwesig is trying to get a good position. She wants to return to the salons in Berlin, to the international salons.
Na salony w Berlinie, na salony międzynarodowe.
Sehr geehrte Kolleginnen und
And she is enabled to do so by Donald Tusk's government through Jan Tombiński, who heads the Polish embassy in Berlin. There are no obstacles. Well, that's right. There are no more obstacles for the politician to come to Poland, a politician who made it possible to bypass US sanctions to complete the construction of the German-Russian gas pipeline Nord Stream 2. She set up a pseudo-environmental organization funded by Gazprom in Mecklenburg.
Pod tą przykrywką, którą stworzyła Manuela Schwesig,
under this cover that Manuela Schwesig created, there was a normal company that chartered ships, the kind of complex engineering vessels that made the completion of this construction possible. It was thanks to her that Gerhard Schröder's and Vladimir Putin's dream was finalized and fulfilled.
Finalizacji i do spełnienia marzeń Gerharda Schrödera i Władimira Putina.
herzlich willkommen.
In the German Senate, senators from the Civic Coalition, the Third Way and the New Left took pictures with her. Now she has a green light to come to Poland.
Pani Kidawa-Błońska wystosowała już od momentu, kiedy...
Ms. Kidawa-Błońska has already extended an invitation from the moment Ms. Schwesig became chairwoman of the Bundesrat, and it is clear enough to say, and unequivocally, that simply Russian-Polish relations are to change under German dictates, and now Ms. Schwesig will be a very nice representative of the German people.
Chyba co do tego nie ma żadnej wątpliwości.
The question is whether this is not the beginning of a warming of relations with the Kremlin by Donald Tusk's government, a test of how much it can afford before a possible renewed reset with Russia. This is a reset with Russia. This is an invitation to Putin's allies, to Poland. We have been warning that this reset with Russia is coming. Tusk has always said that he wants dialogue with Russia as it is. He said that Poland cannot be in the vanguard of anti-Russianism. Germany wants an alliance with Russia, and Tusk will do exactly what Germany expects, including Miss Manuela Schwesig.
Kritik auch und sogar eine Klage.
Hosting guests like Manuela Schwesig is dragging Poland and Polish people into a very dangerous game. The European Commission has officially admitted to an unbelievable scandal. It is confirmed that funds allocated by the European Union from taxpayers' pockets to environmental organisations were also used to finance campaigns targeting political opponents. Those who opposed the implementation of the Green Deal, among others, were attacked. After years of suspicion, the truth has been revealed. The European Commission has officially confirmed environmental NGOs were receiving money for more than just climate-related activities. The Commission notes that the work programme submitted by NGOs contained unacceptable lobbying activities. At issue is funding for environmental organisations from as much as $1 billion worth of the LIFE programme. Its purpose was intended to be simple. The LIFE programme is the European Union's only financial instrument dedicated exclusively to co-financing environmental and climate projects. The word exclusively, however, is misleading. Among other things, organisations that receive these funds and use them to rally against right-wing political figures and any voices critical of the EU's climate policy. They bought figureheads and influenced elections in individual countries where the European establishment was threatened. There is currently no way to enforce accountability against the perpetrators of such actions for influencing elections. This includes the issue of the Green Deal, pushed by the Brussels elite. Its opponents have been criticised by environmental organisations. Meanwhile, the regulations in question negatively affect farmers, among others. They also create an increase in energy prices, which hurts the entire EU economy.
spowodował de facto,
EU
że
climate policy has essentially made large companies start moving production out of the EU because they cannot withstand these huge climate regulation burdens. Today we find out that election interference in favour of these policies was financed with European taxpayers' money.
podatników.
Taxpayers who have no control over what their money is spent on. Only about a third of NGOs disclose what they use their EU funds for. Yet they continued to be funded.
Tu mamy tak wielką.
Here we have such a huge dark zone. This issue should be immediately investigated by the European Court of Auditors, and those responsible for these processes, which have served to harm the European Union, should be named.
Za te procesy.
Brussels promises corrections to the LIFE programme and promises greater transparency. However, the European Commission, headed by Ursula von der Leyen, still wants to support environmental NGOs. This is not the first scandal. There was Qatargate, the Pfizer scandal. Ms von der Leyen remains unpunished. That's what the European Commission was set up for, so that Ms von der Leyen could continue to do what she wanted on behalf of German interests. As President of the European Commission, she should, in theory, look after the interests of the entire Union.
According to senior officials in Washington, the White House is losing patience with the Kremlin. Instead of progress in negotiations, there have been more bombings and shocking war crimes, such as last week in Kryvyi Rih. It seems that the American side is on the verge of issuing an ultimatum to Russia and imposing further sanctions if Moscow continues to drag its feet. 20 people were killed in an attack on Kryvyi Rih, including 9 children. A Russian rocket fell next to a playground. These images have not gone unnoticed. Washington, which is trying to broker a ceasefire, is losing patience.
We're talking to Russia. We'd like them to stop. I don't like the bombing. The bombing goes on, and every week thousands of young people are being killed. And it's a horrible thing that should have never started, would have never started if I were president, 100%.
The U.S. Secretary of State admitted during a meeting at the NATO headquarters last week that Washington has means at its disposal to put pressure on the Kremlin.
And the message is the United States needs to know whether you're serious or not about peace. Ultimately, Putin will have to make that decision. The Russian Federation will have to make that decision. I think the Ukrainians have shown a willingness to enter, for example, into a complete ceasefire to create space for negotiation. At some point here, fairly soon, not 6 months from now, the Russians and Putin will have to make a decision about whether they're serious for peace or not, and I hope they are serious. So it would be good for the world if that war ended.
Both economic sanctions and arms shipments to Ukraine are being considered. The Trump administration has repeatedly stressed that, if negotiations fail, Kyiv will receive the necessary assistance to end the war on the battlefield. Ukraine has agreed to the U.S. proposal, the proposal for a full, unconditional ceasefire. Putin refuses. We are waiting for an answer from the United States, which has not yet come. And we are waiting for an answer from everyone in Europe and around the world who really wants peace. At the same time, the Russians are having increasing problems on the front lines. Heavy fighting continues in the Kursk region. Russian forces are trying to regain control of the territory occupied by the Ukrainian army by pouring more troops into the area. In recent days, the commander of the drone unit of the Akhmat Special Forces, part of Kadyrov's Chechen army, was killed in a clash in this very area.
Насыпай!
Earlier today, King Charles III and his wife Queen Camilla arrived in Rome for a state visit to Italy. This is the king's first overseas trip since being briefly hospitalized for side effects of cancer treatment. The 4-day visit includes meetings with Italian President Sergio Mattarella and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, an address to the Italian joint houses of parliament, a first for a British monarch, and a side trip to Ravenna. A planned meeting with Pope Francis was postponed by mutual agreement due to the Pope recovering from double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff returned to the Vatican 2 weeks ago and made a surprise appearance to the faithful in St. Peter's Square on Sunday. 76-year-old Charles was briefly hospitalized on March 27th due to temporary side effects from treatment for an undisclosed form of cancer Diagnosed more than a year ago, the king appeared the next day, waving to well-wishers in central London, and has since resumed scheduled engagements. In Rome, Charles will highlight the close links between Britain and Italy, two NATO allies, at a time when European nations are working to bolster support for Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. The visit will include a joint flyover of Rome's historic center by the Italian Air Force team, also known as Tricolor Arrows, and their Royal Air Force counterparts, the Red Arrows. The king and queen will attend a reception in Ravenna, in the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the region's liberation from the Nazis by Allied forces on April 10, 1945. The royals will also celebrate the cuisine of Emilia-Romagna region and meet with local farmers whose fields were devastated by floods that recently hit the area.